I have a problem. I, like probably most of you watching, don't have the greatest attention span. And as somebody who very much likes to consume movies as a main form of entertainment, that can be a problem. Sure, if you're going to the theater, it's easy to stay off your phone, to not worry about time, and just kind of get lost in the movie. But it's a lot more difficult whenever you're at home by yourself, and especially whenever it's an older movie that's not in English. So to rectify that, I came up with this challenge. Over the next 6 days, I want to challenge myself to watch all the films that Jacques Tati made, specifically his feature films, and also watch Jacques Demy's 6 main films that he made. Now, a reason for this is I've been very interested in both filmmakers' filmography for quite some time now. I also just have an issue of sometimes getting physical media that I'm super excited about and not getting around to watching it. Again, especially that older stuff that's not in English. So not only am I going to challenge myself to watch these 12 films in the next 6 days, which realistically isn't that difficult, I want to make it a bit more of a practice for myself. And for this, I want to have my phone in the other room of all 6 double features. That way I can't be checking the time or getting distracted or getting on it. Especially for foreign films with subtitles, if you get on your phone for a few minutes, you miss a few lines and then you sometimes feel completely lost. But perhaps a bigger issue for me than that is compulsively checking the time during movies. When I'm at home, my mind's always running a million miles an hour, and I think, okay, how much of this movie is left? What can I do afterwards? How do I schedule that? And it sometimes leads to an issue of thinking, well, I don't want to spend the next 2 hours on this. I'd just be wasting my time watching a movie. But then I always end up spending 2 hours doom scrolling and getting nothing out of it instead. A film isn't necessarily the best way that you can spend your time, but I see it as if you're going to do something that is relaxing and for entertainment, you should at least choose something like a film or a TV show or a good game where it's at least an experience that you may get something out of, whether that be appreciating the artistic merit of it, or just to say that you did something that you actually remember. Because watching YouTube videos and scrolling social media, I don't retain information on there. So I want to challenge myself to do that. And also, I've just been interested to check out these guys' films. Jacques Tati, I've been interested in quite a while, and I at least know a bit about him. I know his films skew much more towards comedy, and comedy is my favorite and easily most watched genre. And to see a slightly different approach at being one with very French sensibilities has interested me for a long time. Jacques Demy, on the other hand, I know next to nothing about. I know most of his films are critically acclaimed, and I know there's one specifically that I think it's called like The Umbrellas of Chernobyl or something. I know it's supposed to be a movie that's very similar to La La Land, and I know his films are considered very essential for diversifying your film portfolio. So I want to tackle both of these, and at the end, I'll give you my ranking, and after each movie, I'll give you a review. First up on our double feature bracket today is Lola, so I'm going to get to that, and I'll see you there. Alright, so I just got done watching Jacques Demy's first film, Lola. I also caught both Jacques Demy and Jacques Tati's original short films. Put the names on the screen right here. I don't remember them. Both of them were fine, but they felt very much like they're almost like pilot episodes to the more real exploration of like the themes that they're trying to get at that are in their debut features. And for Jacques Demy specifically, it felt like a very rudimentary version of what would eventually become Lola. If you don't know the plot of this movie, I certainly didn't going in. It's kind of like a Magnolia type movie. By that I mean there's a few different storylines that are kind of disconnected in a lot of ways throughout a lot of the movie, and then at the end they kind of converge and you see where they're coming into place. It's clear that a theme he wanted to tackle with this film specifically is that of love and loss, and the aspect that really did hit me and that I very much enjoyed in this is the idea of a guy my age, because we tend to insert ourselves into characters we relate to or imagine that they're like us, but somebody my age who feels unfulfilled in life but then finds a girl that he knew before, and they start to click and hit it off, and then he realizes eventually that she doesn't care for him and loves somebody else. The themes of that and love and loss are very well portrayed in this movie, and also I really enjoyed the random musical number that happens pretty much out of nowhere. So with this being the first movie in the marathon, I'm putting it at the top spot current. Definitely want to check out if you're interested, and I don't know what the rest of his films are going to look like, but it was a good starting point for me for Jacques Demy's work. I'm going to go hit the gym quick, and then whenever I get back, I believe we're watching a movie that has something to do with feet. So I gotta hit the gym, all chest, no legs. Yeah. Alright, I'm back from the gym, ready for the next film. For this one, it's Jacques Tati's debut feature. I'm not sure how to pronounce this. I'm pretty sure it's Jour de Feet. But that may be because I think about feet too much. I don't know. But this is a movie that I've actually watched part of before. I have this annoying habit of sometimes thinking I'm going to watch a movie and then starting to watch it. And then, like I was talking about in the intro, you get the idea in your head that, oh, I should be spending my time on something else. Then you just end up wasting your time. For me, that happens. And sometimes I just don't really end up revisiting the movie, and that's the case with this one here. From what I remember, it's been about close to a year since I've seen it, is that it involves a lot of comedic slapstick gags with bikes. I remember not thinking it was particularly funny, but very well done. But we'll see what it goes on for here. And I'm keeping in mind with all these debut features too, that assuming that the work will get progressively better. I don't think either of these filmmakers are known for peaking with their first film. But yeah, excited. Let's check it out. So I just finished my second film in the marathon, which is Jacques Tati's debut feature. And I'm not sure how to pronounce this. I've always called it Jour de Feet, but I am almost certainly wrong on that. Unlike Lola that I watched earlier today, this very much felt through and through like a debut feature. A debut feature of a very talented guy, but still a debut feature nonetheless. By that, it wasn't necessarily bad. In fact, it was quite good, but it feels like the beginning of something good, or like something that is like a good starter point, but there is more potential in the future. This is Miles, my film watching buddy. What do you have to say? Fascinating. It's clear that Jacques Tati's specialty is comedy, and specifically a very slapstick comedy a la Charlie Chaplin or The Three Stooges, but with a profoundly French twist. And this, the general plot of it explores the day-to-day life, specifically a day and night and another day, of a postman. Oh yeah, wait a minute. Yeah, it was Mr. Postman in this. It's one of those films that is a comedy of errors. Very slapsticky, but there were a few gags that I found quite enjoyable. The specific ones that come to my mind immediately are him getting his bicycle thrown out of the restaurant again and again, the cross-eyed guy who was really good at stuff, and a few other specific physical gags involving him and his bike. It's not a deep film by any means. It's very much a surface level comedy, but it's still like a very enjoyable family comedy that also has quite a bit of heart to it. It's a very joyful movie. Watching the trailer for it, it is specifically billed as something that's just happy and very light, and it felt like that. This runtime absolutely ran by me. I mean, it's pretty short, clocking in at only around, I think, 85 minutes or so, but still a very enjoyable film. However, I feel like Lola was just an overall better film, so I'm going to put this one right below that. And that concludes the films for today. I'm realizing that for the sake of this challenge, having it be something that increases my patience is not specifically challenging. For the first one, I was kind of itching because I didn't know what time it was or how much I had left in the movie. But the second one, I looked at the clock when it started and I kind of timed it out in my head for when it was going to end. It wasn't specifically hard to stay off my phone during these films, and 2 movies in one day isn't anything crazy, but whenever you're working a full-time job and have other stuff that you need to do in the day, it's not the worst place to start out. But I'm excited to see where both of these filmmakers' careers go and the movies that we're going to be watching the rest of this week. It is day number 2 of Jacques Week, which I'm now realizing I could have branded more as like a Shark Week parody. And I just got finished watching my first movie for today, which is Bay of Angels, Jacques Demy's. I think it might be a second film, but I could be wrong on it. It's the second film that's included in the collection, at least chronologically. And I'm gonna be honest, I was fairly disappointed by this one. Pretty much all of the Jacques Demy films, except for the one about umbrellas and the one about like donkeys, I think it is. I don't have many expectations going in for, especially these first couple of films, but I just really didn't dig this one that much. The core concept of it is about gambling, and the movie essentially goes in a cycle where it's gambling, losing, conversations about why that upsets you, going back, gambling, winning, being happy and living up in that lifestyle, going back, gambling, losing, and then being upset about it. And then it keeps going around in that rotation. The formulaic nature of this film did lead to some interesting conversations, and the highlights definitely were those sections where it was the guy and the girl, I can't remember either of their names, but the guy and the girl just talking about life, especially after the downer moments. But the repetitive nature and the lack of great themes in it, in my opinion, kind of led to a lackluster experience. There are definitely certain themes. The theme of loneliness is touched on again, but I feel like that was explored a lot better and a lot more in depth in his debut feature Lola. The film looks really good, especially the scenes that take place outside in Monte Carlo and the ones where my fella goes to Paris. All of them look really solidly shot. I find it a lot less visually engaging when they are in the casinos, because the only gambling they really do is roulette. Actually, I think that is literally the only gambling they do in the movie. And it feels like we are getting the same repetitive shots for that over and over again, which is likely by design to make it feel like it's a repetitive process, like, okay, here we go again. But I find myself kind of zoning out during those scenes. For it only being an 85-minute movie, it still felt like it was a little too long due to that repetition. I also didn't really dig the characters that much. Both of them are pretty bad people. The guy can be fairly abusive, and the girl is just straight up a gambling addict and a terrible influence. And I felt like the characteristics of them weren't nuanced enough for me to really care about their relationship or be satisfied by that ending, where it honestly kind of comes out of nowhere. It feels like Jacques felt compelled to add some sort of romantic subplot or tension, so we kind of tacked that on at the end. It's definitely not a bad film, but it's definitely the weakest that I've seen so far this challenge. So it's going at the bottom of the list. My main film left for today is Jacques Tati's I'm pretty sure it's Monsieur Houlette's Holiday. Again, with these French titles, I could be mispronouncing literally everything, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely realizing that yesterday and today are the more rough days for the films, at least, because these are the ones that are a lot lesser known in their filmography. Plus, these 4 films are the only of both of them that are in black and white. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow and the next days where we get more so to the all-timers. But for now, gonna see if this is an improvement on yesterday's Jour de Feet and watch Monsieur Houlette's Holiday. I really hope it's better than Mr. Bean's Holiday. In your seat. Alright guys, it is very late and I just finished Monsieur Houlette's Holiday. I'm not pronouncing the title right, but you know, if you can tell, I'm very tired. It's been a long day, and I watched my first movie fairly early in the day after I got off work, and I started this movie and I kind of laid down on the couch to watch it, and I gotta say one thing for sure, this movie has a great soundscape to it. The general plot of it is that there isn't really a plot. It follows a very similar vein to a film like Mr. Bean's Holiday, Grown Ups, the vacation movies, Funny Games, films that are based around the idea of somebody going on this vacation and it not really having a specific driving force. I mean, the characters do have goals and stuff, but it more so just being about the vibes of what's going on. And this movie, set in this seascape town, does have pretty good vibes. The soundscape is really good, and whenever I watched it, I was on the couch laying down, and I fell into one of those states where I was so exhausted that I was half asleep, but I was still conscious of what was going on, so I never really drifted off. And because of that, I ended up pausing the movie and taking a break for a while after getting up from that, doing a bunch of other things, and was not able to get back to it till late. But I'm back to it now. I finished it, and it's fine. It's really fine. It's not quite as funny as Jour de Feet, but again, the vibes are very very good for it. I know that the character that Jacques Tati plays in this, Hewlett, is his main character going forward for all of his movies, I think except for his last one that he does. And I do gotta admit, I kind of miss his character from Jour de Feet, just because that guy was so just a silly dude, and his mustache is like very much, it added a lot to the character. But I'm sure I'll grow to love this one after a few movies for it. It's mostly just that this one just didn't really grab me that much, and I thought it was fine. I'll put it second to last on the list, right below Jour de Feet, but above Bay of Angels. That's all I got in for me tonight. I need to go to bed. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to watch these movies, especially the second one, Jacques Tati's, I think it's Mon Oncle tomorrow, in a slightly more awake stage in my day. And I'm kind of hoping that these films get better, because none of them have been bad so far, but none of them have been that exceptional in my eyes either. But I know the next 4 films that I'll be watching the next 2 days are considered essentials and the best of the best. So I'll see you then. All right, day 3, everybody give it up for day 3. Woo! Somebody's excited for day 3. I'm back. It was a long night. I had a long day at work too. I'm tired, but I'm still very excited to watch these movies today because, or at least the first one we're going to be watching today, which is The Umbrellas of a name I can't pronounce. Chernobyl. I have no clue. I know it's the one that's very similar to La La Land, and it is primarily the reason that I was interested in watching Jacques Demy's filmography. So I'm excited for that. And then I also heard that Jacques Tati's film for today, Mon Oncle, is a big improvement over his past 2. Not that his past 2 are bad, but this is where he really starts to come into his own. So even though I'm tired, I'm looking forward to these films, and we're gonna get right to it. I'm also very excited for this because I finally get to watch something with color again. Well, I just got finished watching The Umbrellas of Chernobyl again. I just gotta say, I did not realize how much I missed color in film. And especially helps that this is such an amazingly colored film. There are a lot of things that are comparable to La La Land, but one of the biggest things is that both of them very much use color to tell stories. There's a lot of amazing shots in this movie. The opening title sequence alone with all the umbrellas really kind of sold the importance of color in this film, and also was just really, really nice to look at. The contrast of pink and blue for the main 2 protagonists throughout the movie is so visually distinct. The general premise of this story is very similar to La La Land. It's not about Hollywood like that one, or becoming an actor or an actress or a musician, but instead it's about 2 star-crossed lovers who go through some turmoil in their relationship, ending up eventually, spoilers for both movies, getting with somebody else at the end, and kind of reminiscing and thinking of how different their lives would be if it didn't go like that. However, in this movie, the big difference is that the guy has to go away because he gets drafted for the military. This movie very much accomplishes those themes in a very coherent way, and it's very solidly enjoyable in that regard. But my biggest issue with the film, and what's keeping it back from really being, in my eyes, a masterpiece, it's still a really good film regardless, but what's holding it back slightly is honestly one of the things I was looking most forward to, and that's that the whole thing is a musical. You know, we're used to the format of a musical being talk about the plot and then sing about your feelings, but this entire movie, every single line is sung, and because of that, most every single line is about the emotional part of it. Now, I understand that that could probably work really well for some people, and it's probably one of the reasons why this film is so widely adored. But for me, it felt way too much like it was spelling out what I was supposed to feel instead of letting me personally interpret on how these situations that these characters are finding themselves in are going to influence them in their coming decisions. That, and I was a little disappointed too that it still has some of that pacing issues that I found with Demy's first 2 films, in that they aren't necessarily badly paced, but they are very slowly paced, and even for being an hour and a half or less for all of them, it can feel like kind of a drag sometimes to get through. But that could also just be my more modern film sensibilities and my lack of patience bubbling through a little bit more. The one element of this film that really did surprise me is, spoilers, its connection to a past film. This film has a twist very similar to M. Night Shyamalan's Split, where it's very much its own self-contained story, but at a certain point you figure out that it's connected to a previous work of the director. Whenever the one guy with the mustache came in and was saying his intentions with the one girl, saying that he liked her even though she was pregnant with another guy's kid, my initial reaction was, oh, I hate this guy, he's so annoying, and why would he swoop in like that? But then you find out that he was the guy who got friend-zoned in Lola, and you start to really question again your stance on that and how you feel about that character. It still feels kind of sad for him to be the one that she gets with in the end, but it's also kind of fulfilling at the same time, knowing that he's already been through so much heartbreak in the past. It's a really interesting addition that definitely elevates the movie a lot, especially after watching Lola recently and thinking that the two best parts of that were the breakout song in the middle of it and also the heartbreak element. The music in this is pretty good. It feels a little forced sometimes how they are singing. It just seems like fairly unnatural delivery to their lines for the purposes of every line being sung. But it could also sound different because I'm somebody who doesn't speak French and I'm just reading the English subtitles. Maybe it flows better if you actually understand French and are watching it. Another slight issue that I had is that sometimes the music felt like it was a bit meandering, like it was just going among similar chords and instruments for way too long stretches of time. But then certain elements kick in, like the music that starts whenever the third act starts, or some of the music during the ending, or a few other parts where you get some drums in there, you get a different melody going, you get a very different beat, and it really kicks up the energy of the film. I may not love it as much as I would really like to, because I still found it at least slightly boring and a bit too emotional heavy in the dialogue department, but it's still the best film that I've seen this challenge so far. So because of that, it's going right at the top. Next up is going to be Mon Oncle. I don't really know what to expect for this film. I'm just hoping for some good vibes, that I can stay awake today, and that it doesn't overstay its welcome too much. Well, I think we finally got a winner on our hands. I just watched Jacques Tati's Mon Oncle, and it's by far the, maybe not objectively the best film that I've watched for this marathon, but definitely my favorite. Going into this, I know I'm tired. I didn't really want to watch another movie, and if I did, I wanted it to be something modern, something that has English dialogue, because these movies are good, but I miss those elements to films. But this one won me over completely, and I ended up loving the whole thing. This film once again stars Jacques Tati playing his character Monsieur Hewlett, but I found this one much more effective than Mr. Hewlett's Holiday, mostly because it had a lot more driving force. And although it is still technically a somewhat plotless movie, its themes give it enough meaning to where you are still invested even more so in the comedic gags that are happening. And this one has some pretty solid comedic gags. There's a running gag with a fée that's very funny. Everything about the house is both beautifully designed and also feels very relevantly funny. This movie's general theme is about modern technology, quote unquote, because this came out, in the 50s, versus a more traditional way of living. And despite it, coming out almost 70 years ago, those themes and also the visual language and how they're presented still feel so contemporary. A lot of the more futuristic technology that's shown in this house feels very similar to what we have today, but in a much more clunky first-gen kind of way. But it also contrasts that very well with the more simple life of Monsieur Hewlett, as he lives in just a small studio apartment in the city, but is filled with such more of a vibrant community, interesting living spaces, and for all the advantages that they show that technology presents, there are just as many, if not more, to the older way of doing things. It's not saying that modern technology or modern things are necessarily bad, but it is making fun of how we have become so over-reliant on them, so weirdly fixated on the new things, and how there is very much a reason to still embrace the past. This is also Jacques Tati's first movie with color, and though I think Demy used it a little more interestingly in his movie, because that movie has just such an interesting color palette of pastels and are more thematically rich. This movie is still greatly benefited from the use of color. It makes the world in these sets pop all the more, and it feels like a very real lived-in place, but also a fictional place at the same time. I was honestly kind of shocked at how much I enjoyed this movie, especially since I really didn't want to watch another movie today. After watching Umbrellas earlier today, it was so refreshing to watch a movie that had these very interesting and contemporary themes, which, to be fair, Umbrellas did have very interesting contemporary themes, but this movie presented them in a way that was so much more subtle. The messaging is never outright told to you, unlike Umbrellas where it seems like it's sung to you every few seconds. Instead, there's subtlety and there's humor that does not take away from the point but enforces it even more in a very subtle and natural way. It doesn't feel like this movie is trying to get me to change my mind on something. It's trying to comedically demonstrate the real life consequences of the era that this movie was made in, that we're living in now, and that we are pushing further and further towards. It's far and away my favorite film so far this marathon, and because of that, it obviously is going up to the top of the list. I'm excited for tomorrow because the two films that I watched today are my favorite so far from both directors, and apparently tomorrow's films are somewhat direct sequels. I know Playtime is a lot more of a sequel to Mon Uncle than The Girls of Rochester is to The Umbrellas of Chernobyl. To the umbrellas of Chernobyl. To Chernobyl. Dude, I'm so glad that nobody's actually gonna watch this video except for me and like two of my close friends. The Young Girls of Rochefort is considered Jacques Demy's best movie, and yeah, I have to agree with that sentiment. It definitely feels like very much him following up on some of the techniques and themes that he was using in The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, except this time it feels like he learned quite a few lessons from that experience. While the color isn't as interesting as it was in that movie, it's still very colorful, very well shot, and very visually appealing. Instead of having a style where every single line is song, he makes it more of a traditional musical where there's songs, there's talking, there's a song again, there's more talking, and back and forth and back and forth. I don't know if it's just the fact that you are more appreciative whenever the music does kick in because it's a little more limited here, or if it's just the fact that I very much prefer this soundtrack to the ones of Umbrellas, but I really dug the songs on this. I do really wish that I knew French because the instrumentals were so jazzy and the vocal performances were really good, but I feel like sometimes I was too distracted with reading and hearing in my head the meaning of the words through the subtitles rather than experiencing the songs and actually filling up on them through hearing them and experiencing them like I would if I knew the language. The story for this one is very vague in a lot of ways. It's about a couple of girls who are kind of looking for love and looking for what to do with their future in this small town. And a lot of it is treading very similar water to what Jacques has been doing for all of his films to this point. A lot of loss in love, a lot of bad timing in love. Specifically in this one, there's almost a comedic level of bad timing for meeting the right person in this, and that's a very intentional thing. I like, compared to Umbrellas, how this one doesn't spell out its themes quite as much. I mean, it is still very in your face about a lot of things, but it's a lot more subtle about some of the deeper themes that it's getting at, and it gives a lot more leeway to interpretation. My biggest problem is I think I'm just starting to get burnt out on Jacques Demy films because there's not really any objective criticism that I have for this movie why I didn't enjoy it more, but I just didn't enjoy it as much as I kind of wanted to. Maybe it's because I'm just tired of old French movies, even though they all are or have been objectively at least somewhat good, but I feel like I just didn't really get into this one even though all the pieces are there. I don't know. Maybe on a rewatch I would like it a lot more. Maybe I'll think it's an absolute masterpiece then. But for now, I'm gonna say that it's really good. Easily the best film that I've seen of his so far, and very likely my favorite film of his just in general whenever I watch all the other ones. So because of that, I'm gonna put it at the number 2 spot right now, just above yesterday's Umbrellas, but still below yesterday's Mon Uncle. Next is Playtime, which I'm very excited about, my most anticipated film of this marathon. I know a lot of it is supposed to be like a elevated comedy in a lot of ways, where there's so many gags, but they're not necessarily foreground gags, they're background gags, they're side character gags. There's just so many Easter eggs in every scene. And something like that just sounds very interesting and appealing to me, to see a more elevated style of what he was doing in Mon Oncle. So I'm excited, and we're gonna watch that now. Just finished watching Playtime, and I gotta say it ended up being a lot less of my thing than I thought it would be. I want to start out by giving this movie its props. The first half hour or so, I was kind of awestruck by the cinematography. It's intentionally very washed out in a lot of ways, pretty much only grays and some light blues and hues here and there. But what really makes it interesting is it takes this location of Paris, which is kind of weird. I thought pretty much all these movies would be in Paris, but that might just be because I'm American coming at these. That would be like somebody from French thinking that if they're gonna watch 6 films or 12 films by 2 directors, that they'll all be set in New York City. Anyways, this movie is in Paris and it looks great. There are these big wide shots of these places that feels like you're looking at an incredibly detailed painting. There's so much clear attention and care to these shots. The set building is immaculate. And even though it's supposed to be more of a critique on how most modern architecture, modern for the 60s, looks very samey. Also, it's kind of incredible that this and the last film both came out in 1967. Both of these films, especially Playtime, it looks like it could have easily come out in the 80s or 90s, and I would have totally believed it. There's a lot going on in these shots, especially towards the beginning, where there aren't necessarily background gags as much as there are background details. And I guess that's kind of what disappointed me about this movie, is that I just didn't find it particularly funny. And it was also not particularly engaging to me as well, because once I got over that initial reaction of the first half hour where I was just kind of gawking at how they pulled off this, the film kind of slows down its pace a lot. It focuses in more so on a couple key specific set locations, especially the bar scene, which is like a 50-minute scene, and it becomes a lot more kind of boring in my opinion. I feel like the themes that Tati is trying to cover in here were done a lot more interestingly, and I found them much more funny in Mon Oncle. Mijio Hewlett is definitely a highlight of it. A lot of the movie doesn't focus on him, but whenever it does, he's always a joy to see on screen, and I love the little detail that he runs into so many people who are just so excited to see him. I'm a little disappointed, but it is still an objectively really good movie. So because of that, I'm putting it right below Lola on the list. And also, I'm going to make a change from yesterday. I'm going to change Umbrellas to 3.5 stars instead of 4. Just thinking about it more and more, the problems that I talked about there really irked me, and I have less and less of a desire to go back to it. I'm also going to be moving that below Playtime, but still above Jour des Filles. An aspect I forgot to mention about Playtime that I really enjoyed was just the fact that there were characters speaking English sporadically through that. And it's just nice to watch something with people speaking English where I'm not just focusing and honed in on the subtitles whenever there's dialogue. I'm getting very tired. If I were to go about this again, I would definitely not binge them like I have been, because I feel like, especially the further I go along in this marathon, I'm appreciating the movies less and less because I'm so familiar with the themes and the styles that both of these filmmakers are known for and are trying to accomplish that it's starting to feel repetitive and almost somewhat like a chore. Now that I'm past the Renaissance era of both these directors, tomorrow's films are considered pretty decent, and then the last days are more there. What are you doing? And then the last day is more so ones that are very controversial, even amongst fans of the director. But I am excited that I'm getting close to the end. I'm ready to watch some movies from this millennium, and also some movies in English afterwards. And I'm also ready to not have to dedicate 3 to 4 hours each day to watching movies. I love to watch movies, and on my days off, I'll watch movies for like 5 or 6 hours straight. But to do it every single day and to cram it into a busy schedule is getting kind of exhausting. So I'm glad I'm getting close to the end, and tomorrow we'll get through these movies. I'll probably enjoy some of them. and I'll see you then.
Donkey!
Welcome to day 5 of this challenge. I woke up this morning, and before doing anything else other than using the bathroom and getting coffee, I watched today's movie, which was Donkey Skin. Partially because I'm just kind of tired of these movies at this point, and I wanted to knock one out as early in the day as possible. And wasn't a big fan of this one. Just gonna make this short. I'm getting kind of tired of Demy's themes that he keeps using. They're not bad movies ever, and they're not bad themes to cover, but his films clearly were not meant to be binged like this, because it feels like very similar themes and stories with a different, very different coat of paint each time, but still very repetitive and very much not my thing. This one is basically just a fairy tale film about a girl who is going to be forced to marry her dad, which isn't very poggy because incest, and she wears a donkey skin, and the fairy godmother has the hots for her dad, so she sends her away, and she finds somebody else, and everybody complains how ugly she is and how she stinks, even though it's because she's wearing a rotting corpse on herself the whole time, and I just was not particularly invested. Demy once again uses colors in a very interesting way. There's a very distinct color difference in the different kingdoms that they go to. One, everybody looks like Tobias Funke because they all are completely blue. One, all of them are red. Which, by the way, I feel bad for the horses in this movie because they were painted that color, and there's a certain scene where they're walking through water, and I didn't really see the paint start to come off during that. So unless they have a certain type of paint removal, I'm wondering if those horses were somewhat stained for life. Didn't really dig this one that much. Again, probably would have liked it more if I wasn't binging his movies. So for now, I'm gonna put it at the bottom of the list. It's still not a terrible movie by any means. I completely understand why it has its fans, but it's not for me, and it didn't really feel like something that I was particularly invested in watching now. I don't know if I'll conquer Traffic this morning or later, but yeah. Doesn't matter to you. Well, I got good news. It's nice because it's not even 4 o'clock yet. I'm at the end of day 5. There's only one more day to go, and Traffic, a pretty good movie. It's a very baseline Jacques Tati film. It has pretty much what you would come to expect from it. Slower pace than most comedies that I'm used to, but still some really good visual gags, some really cool set pieces, really good set design, and the lovable Mr. Hewlett as the main character. I've really come to like his character in these movies. I'm pretty sure he's not in Parade, the final movie that Tati made, but going through the last 4, his character has grown and he's just such a lovable guy. Especially in this, I like the theme of cars and how that can bring out a lot of anger and rage in people, but to see that contrasted with the more simple Mr. Hewlett, who is so calm and his demeanor is so relaxed and kind at the same time, is just very comedically funny to see, but also very wholesome. Don't have much to say about this one. Again, very middle of the road for Tati. I'm gonna put it just below Umbrellas, but still above Jour de Feet. That's it for day 5. Tomorrow's the final day. I know tomorrow's films are considered like the worst generally out of what we've watched so far, but who knows? They could still be enjoyable. If nothing else, I have faith that Jacques Tati's last will be at least somewhat interesting and have a couple comedic gags. And Jacques Demy's films, even though I haven't been a fan as much as I would like to as a lot of them, they always end up having something interesting to them, whether that be really good music, really good coloring, always great cinematography. So I'm sure it won't be that bad, and it'll be nice to finally have this challenge done. So I'm gonna see you then. Un Timbre à Ville, or A Room with a View, is the last Jacques Demy film for this marathon and is by far the worst. For every other film that I wasn't a big fan of for Jacques Demy, it could be chalked up to the fact that, oh, it just wasn't for me. Like yesterday's Donkey Skin, it's not an objectively bad movie, and I understand why tons of people love it, why it's critically acclaimed and highly regarded. It just didn't really click with me and wasn't for me. A Room with a View, though, I think is just straight up a bad movie. It's about all these different subplots revolving around a protests going on and a strike, and nothing really clicks, nothing really works. It's so drawn out and melodramatic. I did not give a crap about any of the characters whatsoever. It follows the same type of structure as The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, where every single line of the film is sung, but this soundtrack is even more meandering and boring than that one. That one had a lot of good moments, but also a lot of meandering moments. This one just feels like meandering moments. It's content to live in the melancholy musically and story-wise, but also shares a similar issue with that movie except ramped up to 11, where its characters just spouting exposition and feelings through song, very much telling directly to the camera what they're feeling or what's going on instead of, you know, actually showing it. It makes stuff like, especially the exposition scenes towards the beginning, a real chore to watch. Also spoilers, but the movie ends in a really kind of stupid way. A love interest gets hurt and dies, and though the girl sees this and is surrounded by people she cares about, she just goes and offs herself and nobody does anything about it. They're all just standing there like, oh, I don't know what's going on. The one saving grace of this movie is that it still looks pretty good. You can tell that Jacques Demy still very much loves his colors, and even with the more limited setting of this, he still finds a way to make it at least visually interesting with the different colors he uses. But I'm glad I'm done. I don't know if I'm going to be watching the other Jacques Demy films. I don't have them, and they're not part of this challenge. I'll definitely probably be giving pretty much every film except for this one another chance at some point whenever I'm more in the mood for this kind of stuff. But A Room with a View, not a fan. Gonna put it at the bottom of the list, and it's not even close. We finally made it. Last film finished. I am fairly relieved. This was Jacques Tati's Parade, and it's not really a feature film, at least not a narrative one. It's more of a documentary TV movie, and it was okay, I guess. It honestly feels like something that my parents would put on the TV on a Saturday night that was like airing on PBS from like the 60s or 70s. Kind of like a feature-length TV movie version of the Lawrence Welk Show. It's a variety comedy show with it being about the circus. I'm guessing this was some sort of act that was put on in touring, and it has intermissions here and there where Jacques Tati will come out and do some standalone physical comedy, and I didn't find any of it funny. There's charm to this movie's concept, at least. The idea of an old Tati who has directed a number of films, who already has his fans and is beloved, just being able to go to the circus and do his thing and make some people happy there and hopefully make some people laugh at home too, is like a very sweet send-off in a lot of ways. But I didn't get anything out of watching this. I was kind of bored. I didn't find it funny. There's some charm here. Not the worst thing in the world, but I'm gonna put it second to last, right above whatever movie I watched this morning. I can't even remember the name of it at this point. We're back up here. Challenge is done. It's been a long time editing the video, and I wanted to come up here to give you guys a little bit of an outro and also just talk about some of the things that I would change, that I got wrong, and make some adjustments. First of all, the challenge of this was supposed to be to help me with my attention span, and I think it did a bit of that job. Obviously not as much as I would have liked to. I'll admit it. The last couple of days I've had my phone with me. I've tried not to be on it, but there were a few times where people called me. There was a work call or a family call that I needed to take, pause the movie, especially this morning with those last two films, which I kept calling it A Room with a View. It's not called that. It's called A Room in Town. That and Parade. I was on my phone for some of it, and yeah, not super proud of that, but other parts, you know, pretty good, and it was better towards the beginning. Now, an entirely different question is, would I recommend people go about this? And that's going to be a solid no from me, dog. I feel like I did myself a disservice for some of these movies by watching them in the binging way that I did, because especially for Jacques Demy's, I was not able to properly process some of the stuff and just kind of watched it, watched another movie, and then next day kind of same. And also watching that many French movies, especially whenever you don't speak the language and when you're not a fan of older films, it just got really tiring and I wasn't able to appreciate it as much. My pronunciation for a lot of these things, watching them back, is terrible. I'm pretty sure it's not Mijor Hewlett, it's Mijor Hulot. I'm pretty sure it's the Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and the other one's pronounced the Young Girls of Rochefort, but I could be pronouncing those wrongs, but those were my big things I kept mispronouncing throughout most of the video. I don't speak French, if that's not already clear. I'd say my biggest surprise in this was the 1-2 hit of Mon Oncle and Playtime. I was not expecting to love Mon Oncle nearly as much as I did, and I was kind of disappointed in Playtime. Again, I think part of it is the disservice of binging them like this, but I just didn't get out of that movie what I wanted to, and I think part of that might have been going on with the wrong expectations. I also want to note that I was way too harsh on Donkey Skin. After thinking back on it, I like that movie a lot more than I gave it credit for. All the points that I had in there I think are still fairly valid, but I enjoy that it's just different and that it's weird. He goes for very much a different style, and though it still does have those themes of love and a little bit of loss too, which, you know, is in all of his films, they're done in a much more family-friendly way. But speaking of which, before I head out, I do want to go through my list one more time, make a few adjustments, and give you guys a final ranking. Alright, so at the top spot, I have Mon Oncle. That's not going to change. Easily my favorite film of this watch. I thought the comedy was the best out of all the Jacques Tati films. I loved how it had those themes of modernism versus tradition, and how it didn't feel preachy about it, but it was a lot more subtle in its messaging, and it's just a lot of fun. Next I have The Girls of Rochefort, which I'm actually going to go back, and I'm going to bump that one up to a 4.5. I think easily without the burnout of watching all these movies back to back to back, I would think this is like a 9 out of 10. And the more I think about it, the more I like certain aspects to it. And it's just a fun movie. I had trouble watching part of it because I was tired and I was burnt out, but just the colors of it, the jazzy soundtrack especially, carries so much of the more boring moments, or what would be boring moments, and elevates them a lot. And I think this is easily Demy's best use of music in any of his films. Next, I'm going to go Lola. Kind of a surprise for me because it was the first film I watched, but the themes of rejection and heartbreak was my first exposure with this movie in his filmography. But it also just hit the hardest, and there were certain elements to it that felt very relevant that carried through all of his other films, partially because of the shared universe stuff, but also just because it's also very clearly very personal to him. Next, I'm going to go Playtime. Again, disappointed and from a comedic sense of this movie, but it's still kind of amazing that this happened at all. And like I said in my review, I absolutely love how this movie is shot. It feels like you're at a landmark, like the Grand Canyon, or like going into like the Redwood Forest, where you just have to stand back or sit back and you're just kind of in awe of what you're seeing with so many details. The eye is wandering all over. That's kind of how I felt for the first half hour of that movie, and I think it's really great because of that. The second half did not vibe with, but I think that's partially due to being burnt out on French movies and just movies in general that day. But for now, I'm going to keep it here at number 4. Number 5, Umbrellas of Cherbourg looks good there. Very influential on a lot of modern filmmaking. Amazing coloring in that movie. The music is good, but I stand by the fact that how the exposition is delivered and how there is such a specific focus on talking to the audience about the emotions of the characters instead of letting that naturally show through their actions really weighs it down for me. After that, Traffic, that's good there. Very middle of the road Tati. Some really good gags in there, but also some parts that are a little bit slow. After that, Jour de Feet. I like that movie. Maybe in black and white and very, very old, but it still has a good sense of humor, some good gags, and though I grew to eventually love Major Hulot, I still loved the protagonist that Jacques Tati played in this movie as well. The next big change I'm going to make on this is that I am moving Donkey Skin way up to 8th place. And I'm also going to change that from a 3 to 3.5. I just think the weirdness and the creativity of this really has boosted it in my mind, and it's been one that I've been more itching to go back to than some of the others. And I think it was just because it was the morning, I was tired, a little bit grumpy that I was so harsh on it. I still have problems with it, but I think it's a lot better than what I gave it credit for. After that, at number 9, Major Hulot's Holiday. Great vibes in this movie, some okay jokes, but it can frankly be a little boring. Bay of Angels, maybe the most boring of the good movies on this list. I still respect it, but I didn't particularly enjoy it. Especially those scenes in the casinos, they just seemed to go on, and they were so repetitive that it kind of bothered me. Following that, Parade, not really a narrative feature, but more so just a variety show that Jacques Tati wanted to throw on. There is charm to it, but I didn't really get anything out of it. And solidly in 12th place, A Room in Town, not A Room with a View. Didn't care for this one at all. Lots of issues I already talked about in my review, and I have no urge to watch it again. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that list and those rankings. Merci d'avoir regardé. N'oubliez pas d'aimer, de commenter et de vous abonner. Entonces, el son buena tours et vidéo.